Your friends aren't afraid of losing you. They're afraid you'll rise somewhere they can't reach. Something in you already knows this. The most dangerous people in your life are often the ones sitting closest. Not enemies, not strangers, not rivals, friends. Watch long enough, and you'll see it. The subtle wince when you succeed, the forced smile when you elevate, the quiet disappointment when your life begins to outgrow theirs. Most friendships don't collapse loudly. They rot silently. They decay under the weight of unspoken envy, quiet comparisons, and the fear that one day you won't need them anymore. People talk about toxic friends as if the harm is obvious, but the truth is far darker. The real danger is the friend who pretends to be happy for you, the friend who praises you in public but questions you in private, the friend who encourages your dreams until those dreams become real, the friend who loves the old version of you, the smaller one, the struggling one, the one they could understand and control. Success doesn't just change your life, it exposes theirs. And for a moment, the world feels quiet, because deep down, you sense it. That invisible tension, that unspoken rivalry, that flicker of resentment in someone who swore they cared. This is the part nobody warns you about. Your growth will cost you people who never wanted you to grow. Your ambition will disturb people who settled. Your elevation will offend people who chose comfort. Your strength will threaten people who rely on your weakness. And before you turn 30, these truths collide like a breaking wave. Not to punish you, but to show you who was standing beside you and who was standing on you. This is the beginning, the first fracture, the first hidden truth. And that's where the illusion breaks. To understand why friendships can become invisible cages, you must first understand Schopenhauer's universe, one constructed not from hope, but from the unfiltered truth of the human condition. Schopenhauer believed that beneath every thought, every emotion, every desire lies the will, an irrational, blind force driving all living things. It pushes you to seek, to want, to chase, and to suffer. You imagine you make choices, but the will pulls strings you never see. Friendship, he argued, is no exception. Beneath its surface lies an endless exchange of needs. The need for validation. The need for distraction. The need for reassurance that life isn't as aimless as it feels. In friendship, the will disguises itself as affection, connection, belonging. But the mechanism remains the same. Two individuals feeding each other's hunger for meaning in a meaningless world. Schopenhauer also wrote, "Life swings like a pendulum, backward and forward, between pain and boredom." Friends often become the buffer between these two extremes. We cling to them to avoid pain. We rely on them to escape boredom. But dependency is never free. The illusion of closeness hides the reality of control. The illusion of loyalty hides the reality of expectations. The illusion of love hides the reality of self-serving motives. When you look at friendship through the lens of the will, everything becomes clearer and far more unsettling. It is not that friends are inherently evil. It is that humans, driven by unconscious desires, use each other without even realizing it. And for a moment, the world feels quiet. Because once you see the machinery behind affection, the gears behind loyalty, the motives behind kindness, you begin to question everything. And that's where the unraveling begins. You think you know who you are, your values, your dreams, your boundaries. But much of what you call identity is borrowed. Look closely. The music you once loved, the opinions you adopted, the worldview you defend, the dreams you chase. Most of these did not originate within you. They were absorbed, piece by piece from the people you surrounded yourself with, especially your friends. Humans are imitation machines. You mirror tone. You absorb psychology. You internalize beliefs, not consciously, but effortlessly, quietly, subtly. Before 30, this effect is even stronger, because your identity is still forming, still malleable, still vulnerable to external influence. Your friendships become architects of your selfhood. But here's the hidden cost. When your identity is shaped by others, it is also owned by them. Your preferences become extensions of their approval. Your choices become echoes of their expectations. Your life becomes a reflection of their influence, and you don't even notice it happening. Consider how you judge your achievements, often relative to your circle. Consider how you interpret your failures, often through the lens of comparison. Consider how you measure your worth, often through the eyes of people who are just as lost as you. And for a moment, the world feels quiet. Because once you realize how much of you was never truly yours, you begin to wonder who you might have become without the noise. This is the first regret people feel after 30. Not the friends they lost, but the self they never allowed themselves to become. And that's where the illusion deepens. Imagine a young man named Ethan. He grows up surrounded by people, classmates, coworkers, childhood friends, each one a mirror, reflecting pieces of who he should be. One friend tells him he's too ambitious. Another tells him he's not ambitious enough. One pushes him towards stability. Another mocks him for not taking risks. Ethan listens, because that's what we're taught to do. After all, friends know us best, so he shapes himself to fit their expectations. He studies what they approve of, dates who they find acceptable, adopts opinions they agree with, avoids paths they warn him about. Years pass. Ethan becomes successful, at least in appearance. But the success feels hollow, like wearing someone else's coat. It fits, but not comfortably. Then one night, sitting alone in his apartment, he realizes something terrifying. He doesn't know what he actually likes. Not really, not independently. Not without the background noise of other people's voices telling him who he should be. It hits him like a quiet collapse. He lived in a room full of mirrors, but never once looked at his own reflection. And for a moment, the world feels quiet. This is the subtle tragedy of friendship, when the will to belong becomes stronger than the will to be. You don't lose yourself all at once. You lose yourself in 1,000 harmless compromises that eventually erase who you were meant to become. Ethan didn't choose the wrong friends. He simply never chose himself. And that's where the distortion begins. In theory, your friends want you to win. In reality, they want you to win just enough, but never more than them. This is one of the darkest truths about human nature. Envy is silent, but it is never absent. Most people can tolerate your happiness. Very few can tolerate your success. Almost none can tolerate your superiority, especially when it comes to status, opportunity, and income. A friend may smile when you get promoted, but something inside them contracts when they realize you've leaped ahead. A friend may congratulate you on your business, but their voice tightens when they learn you're earning more than they ever dreamed. And in that moment, affection becomes calculation. They begin discouraging you gently. They highlight the risks. They question your choices. They downplay your accomplishments. They make jokes about your ambition. But these aren't jokes. They're warnings. They're psychological attempts to pull you back into the familiar, predictable version of yourself, the one who posed no threat to their ego. You think they're supporting you, but what they're really doing is protecting their position in the silent hierarchy of the friendship. Because your success forces them to face their own stagnation, your elevation feels like their demotion. Your growth exposes their inertia, and for a moment, the world feels quiet. The truth is simple. A friend who cannot celebrate your elevation is not a friend. They are a competitor wearing the mask of compassion. Success does not change you. It reveals them. And that's where the fracture begins. Social media didn't just distort friendship. It magnified envy into a currency. Every post, every achievement, every milestone becomes a psychological trigger. Not only for strangers, but for your own friends. You post a vacation photo. A friend feels poorer. You share a promotion. A friend feels smaller. You announce a breakthrough. A friend feels slower. Modern friendship is built on comparison disguised as connection. On social media, your victories don't just inspire people. They expose them. Every achievement becomes a mirror that forces others to confront their own lack of progress. And that mirror is merciless. You'll notice it when your posts about pain get more engagement than your posts about growth. When your struggles get sympathy, but your success gets silence. When the people closest to you watch your stories, but avoid your wins. Because envy is quiet, but it is constant. And for a moment, the world feels quiet. Here is the hidden mechanism. People don't envy what you are. They envy what you remind them they could be, but aren't. Your elevation breaks the unspoken pact of friendship. The pact that says, we stay similar. We grow at the same pace. We never outshine each other. The moment you violate that pact, even unintentionally, you become a threat. They don't want you higher. Not because they hate you, but because your height reveals their depth. And that's where the spiral begins. There are tasks in life that only solitude can complete. The formation of character, the birth of conviction, the understanding of the self, the confrontation with suffering, the sharpening of discipline, the refinement of purpose. Yet friends often become the greatest obstacles to these inner labors, not through malice, but through noise, through constant invitations, shared routines, group expectations, and subtle emotional obligations. You tell yourself you're being social. You tell yourself you're building memories. You tell yourself you're living life. But it's avoidance disguised as connection. Here is the paradox. The more time you spend with others, the less time you spend with yourself. And the less time you spend with yourself, the more foreign your own mind becomes. Schopenhauer understood this deeply. His antidote was simple. A man can be himself only so long as he is alone. Solitude is not loneliness. Solitude is self-ownership. But modern friendships are built on the fear of solitude. People cling to connection to avoid confronting the emptiness they carry inside. They fill time with noise to avoid hearing their own doubts. They drown their inner voice in conversation to avoid listening to the truth. And for a moment, the world feels quiet. Because silence is confronting, yet silence is where identity forms. Silence is where clarity emerges. Silence is where strength is born. Friendship distracts you from this work, not intentionally, but inevitably. And that's where the stagnation begins. This is the truth people resist the most. Friendships are not meant to last forever. They are meant to reveal who you are today. The person you were at 16 is not the person you are at 25. The dreams you had at 20 are not the dreams you carry at 30. But friendships preserve old versions of you, versions you've outgrown, but they haven't. Friends remember your mistakes long after you've moved past them. They recall your weaknesses long after you've overcome them. They treat you as the person you used to be, not the person you're becoming. You evolve. They evolve. Not always in the same direction. Some friends grow stagnant. Some grow resentful. Some grow complacent. Some grow self-destructive. And some simply grow apart. But here's the mistake. You cling to friendships out of guilt, nostalgia, or fear, not alignment. You stay because leaving feels cruel. You maintain bonds that no longer nourish you. You sacrifice your growth to preserve their comfort. And for a moment, the world feels quiet. Because deep inside, you know the truth. You cannot grow while holding on to people who won't grow with you. Friendship is not about loyalty to the past. It's about alignment in the present. Clinging is not kindness. It is self-betrayal. And that's where the drift begins. Here is where the philosophy becomes personal. After hearing these truths, something inside you tightens. A quiet sadness, a slow grief. The sense that something precious, something you relied on, trusted, believed in, has begun to dissolve. And it should, because the collapse of illusions always feels like loss. You begin thinking about the friends you had, the friendships you clung to, the people you carried even when it drained you, the time you gave away because you feared being alone. You replay moments where you were laughed at, underestimated, manipulated, or envied, and only now recognize what was happening. You realize that some friendships made you smaller. Some friendships kept you stagnant. Some friendships drained your time, purpose, and potential. Some friendships were nothing more than shared wounds, mistaken for connection. And for a moment, the world feels quiet. Because the grief is real, but so is the clarity. This is the emotional low point, not because the truth is bleak, but because the illusion was comforting. You're not grieving friendships. You're grieving your old blindness. The moment you see the machinery behind human relationships, something inside you cracks. But cracks are where light enters. Awareness hurts, but it also heals. And that's where the awakening begins. Truth. 5. Most friendships are conditional, especially when you rise. People support you until your success threatens their story, until your income surpasses theirs, until your lifestyle changes, until your ambition disrupts the equilibrium that once kept them comfortable. The conditions were always there. You simply couldn't see them from below. Truth 6. Friends don't want you. Higher than them. This is the truth people refuse to admit. Many friends want you to improve, just not to outgrow them, not to earn more, not to gain influence, not to ascend to a level where they can no longer reach you. Your growth makes them insecure. Your achievements make them anxious. Your elevation makes them resentful. They say, "Don't forget us when you're successful." But what they really mean is, "Don't become someone who no longer needs me." And when you do rise, they subtly withdraw. They minimize your accomplishments. They critique your decisions. They question your motives. They joke about your new life. But jokes are just truths wearing disguises. Truth 7. Solitude builds the strength. They secretly fear. This is why they want you distracted, comfortable, predictable, because a person who grows alone becomes untouchable, silent, focused, self-defined, internally powered. And for a moment, the world feels quiet. You realize that the greatest threat to insecure friends is not your arrogance. It is your independence. Success doesn't destroy friendships. It reveals which friendships were built on equality and which were built on hierarchy. And that's where the turn begins. Detachment is not emotional coldness. It is psychological clarity. It is understanding that most people love the version of you that stays within their emotional reach. Few love the version of you that rises beyond it. Schopenhauer understood that envy was a fundamental human impulse, a shadow the will cast on every relationship. This is why detachment becomes essential. When you detach, you stop shrinking to make others comfortable. You stop apologizing for your ambition. You stop dimming your light to match their darkness. You stop negotiating your potential to preserve their ego. You begin to see friendships for what they are. Not sacred bonds, but psychological exchanges governed by unconscious needs. Some friends elevate you. Some delay you. Some drain you. Some fear you. Some secretly wish for your decline. Detachment doesn't mean leaving them. It means seeing them clearly, calmly, without illusion. And for a moment, the world feels quiet. Because the moment you detach from their approval, you rise above their envy. You stop being shaped by small minds and start being pulled by your own future. Detachment is not abandonment. It is sovereignty. It is choosing your path, even if it means walking alone. And that's where the liberation begins.